The Green Monkey. I learned that love at first sight existed at the tender age of 3. Cupid's arrow jackhammered deeply into my chest the moment I saw him, displayed alluringly in the Christmas toy window of Gottschalk's department store. Long and skinny, his furry green limbs twined into the scrolls of a big brass bed. It was a crisp afternoon, and in contrast to my cold nose, my small hands felt toasty, clasped in my parents' larger ones as we walked 3 abreast through the throng of holiday shoppers. We were headed back to our car after an hour or 2 of shopping, followed by sandwiches at the Woolworth lunch counter. I was full, tired, and in need of a nap. My father, never too patient with squirmy, recalcitrant toddlers, scooped me up into his arms, thus giving me an adult's eye view of the final holiday window we were passing before rounding the corner, aimed for the parking lot. That simple act changed my life. For the very first time, I felt the giddy pounding of a besotted heart, a feeling that would become achingly familiar as I stumbled from crush to crush throughout my childhood and adolescence. My parents had paused before the window, which displayed an opulent crush of toys in a faux bedroom vignette. Toys were piled on the bed and strewn across the floor. They teetered on dressers, perched on bedside tables, and spilled from a child-sized rocking chair upholstered in cowboy print. My parents were cooing at me, attempting that old trick of distracting their darling fussy child with happy clucking and promises of ice cream, a trick that often fails as parents discover. This time, however, the trick was seemingly successful, although they didn't know I had quieted for a completely different reason. Catching my breath in a little hiccup, I stared, transfixed, at the huge green monkey with bright orange paws perched in the sinuous brass headboard. It oversaw the embarrassment of toys, a benevolent look on its molded plastic face. Its painted eyes stared directly into mine, and at that moment, I felt the pit of your stomach punch of true love. I cried out to my parents and pointed into the window. That! I want that! Of course, that could have meant any of the toys scattered throughout the display, but my father, not willing to indulge me further, walked firmly away, each step taking me further from my beloved. The final walk to our car, a sporty green 1958 Chevy sedan with jaunty fins and a dramatic swallowtail trunk, found me snotty-nosed and wailing, "Go back! Go back!" but to no avail. I fell asleep on the way home, stretched out along the cold vinyl back seat. I have a hazy memory of being carried into our house and gently lowered into my brand new big girl bed, which I'd received for my 3rd birthday a month before. My mother, ever wanting to grant my heart's desire, woke me a few hours later and asked what I'd seen in the window. I babbled about the green monkey, how I loved it and wanted it, pure desire making me eloquent, or so I thought. My mother was confused by my pleading for a geen munket, which she finally deciphered correctly. Mother called the store, intending to order it for delivery. The store clerk was confounded, repeating that there were no stuffed green monkeys to be had in the toy department. "Check the window," my mother instructed. "I'll wait." When the clerk returned, the mystery was solved. He told my mother that the green monkey wasn't merchandise. It was a window display prop and thus not for sale. Well, my mother was having none of it. She requested to speak to the manager in her "I'm a kindergarten teacher, so don't mess with me, buddy" voice. Her insistence paid off because a few days before Christmas, the big white Gottschalk's delivery truck pulled into our driveway. A man in white coveralls hopped out and trotted to the rear of the truck, flinging open its roll-up door with a flourish, or so it appeared to me, as my mother stood just inside our open door, holding me in her arms and letting the heat out, as my father would have complained had he been home, which he wasn't. Putting me down, she received the huge white box tied with a thick red satin ribbon and hustled me back inside. But instead of placing the box under the Christmas tree, she led me to my room and put it on my bed. "You can open it now," she said, and stood in the doorway to watch. My mother certainly knew her way around a grand gesture. But of course, I knew. I had no doubt that the box held within it my green monkey. He had been mine from the first moment our eyes met. I'd prayed for him every evening since, kneeling outside at twilight in the dead Bermuda grass beneath my swing set, with my head resting on the cold metal seat, clasped hands cushioning my cheek. "Please, God," I'd whisper in reverential awe, "please bring me the green monkey." I didn't bother praying to Santa. Why beseech a lesser deity when something so important was on the line? This plea required me to jump the chain of command and throw myself at the mercy of the big boss himself. I tore into that box with the ferociousness of a lion tearing into a wildebeest, cardboard ripping, white tissue flying, the red ribbon floating languidly to the floor. There he was, a slightly shop-worn store prop, face scratched a bit, with his cheap green fur beginning to mat ever so slightly here and there. His impossibly long limbs weren't cozily stuffed, but were simply lengths of stiff wire wrapped in loose fur strips, facilitating the posing of his body in various displays. His big ears were molded Halloween mask plastic stapled to his head, and a skinny tail, wired and wrapped in fake orange fur, dropped limply toward the floor. He was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I thanked my mother profusely, clutching the green monkey and crying with joy. Later that night, I heard my father attempting to upbraid her for having spent whatever ungodly amount the store had charged for the shabby old thing. Mother just ignored him. Although I was in my bed, snuggling my green monkey, I imagined her mouth pressed into a determined smile, eyes full of the steely resolve that I would come to see again and again throughout her life as she dealt with my handful of a father. I still have my green monkey, much the worse for wear. Sometimes he lives in my storage, sealed in a black plastic trash bag. Sometimes he's stuffed into the back of a high closet shelf or tucked into my grandmother's cedar chest. Today, he is in my bedroom, hanging from the iron scrolls of my headboard, exactly where he belongs.